Everyone. Bonjour à tous. This webinar will be in English today. Thank you for joining us. I hope wherever you're in the world, I hope you're having a good day. First of all, we really want to know where are you watching this webinar from. So please drop it in the Q&A. That would be very helpful for us and to give you some quality feedback and recommendations today. We would also love to know if you're more on the creative or the business expert kind of industry. That would be also very helpful to give you some advice and feedback. I'm Romain Poirot. I'm a partner at French Morning Media Group. For those who don't know us, we are the leading provider of information to French expats living in the USA, Canada, and the UK. And we also have a pretty good following from people interested in those countries, but actually still living in France today. Today, we're presenting why you should get an O1 and how to get it. I would like to do a very quick housekeeping before we get started. We're also live on Facebook Live, and you will also be able to watch us on YouTube. So if you have any questions on any platform, please drop it in the comments and we'll handle those questions at the end of the presentation. Also, always make sure you join us from a laptop or a tablet, as we'll be sharing our screen today. So you will be able to read the slides and enjoy the presentation way better. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to Ron and Archer. I'll just briefly introduce them and I'll give the room to Ron right after. So Ron Maydern brings a unique and fresh perspective to the practice of business immigration law. Ron understands what you do and how you do it. Ron holds a JD from UCLA School of Law, a bachelor's and master's degree in industrial mechanical engineering. Archer Duscher Figueiredo, with solid experience in the intersection between media and technology, Archer has been helping creatives shape their business in the US. Archer holds a bachelor and master's degrees in law from PUC Sao Paulo, Brazil, and a master's degree in media, entertainment, and technology law and policy law from UCLA Law School. I will now turn the room over to Ron, who will start this presentation. Thank you.
Merci, Romain. Bonjour. That's my French for the day. Welcome, everybody. Let me just get the screen sharing going here. Hang on one second. Okay, we are good. So welcome again, everybody. We're really happy to be here with you. And thank you again, Romain. And just so everybody knows, we'll have a presentation for about the first half, and then we really want to hear your questions, and we'll have more of an interactive session where Romain will come back and help us go through the questions. I'll be starting off, and then Arthur will do the second half of the presentation, so not to worry, you'll get to see him again. So without further ado, let me get into it. Hang on, there we go. So that was a great introduction. Just a little bit, I think that's important for this presentation. We're going to be covering all the different types of the O visas. This covers people that are extraordinary in business and science. That's what I will mainly focus on, as well as people in the arts, entertainment, music, theater, film, anything creative. And Arthur, who is an amazing guitarist with the guitar showing behind him, we'll focus on that part of the presentation. So just at a high level, what we're going to talk about today, I'm sure everybody wants to know what's going on with US immigration. We have a new president, so I'll give you a little bit of an update there. We will talk about what is the O1 visa, when you should start planning, how long is it going to take. A lot of people on the call maybe are wondering, will you qualify? I can assure you that many more of you qualify than you might think. And sort of an update on what is happening in terms of actual success rates. One thing to note, just in terms of when you should start to apply, The process really consists of two steps. There is the petition that goes to the US Immigration Service that's filed by mail. In case anybody's wondering, COVID has not impacted that at all. Those petitions can be filed at any time. Premium processing service is available, so you can even have your answer within 2 weeks. If you're outside of the US, you will then need to go to the second step, which is to apply for a visa at the nearest US consulate. That's where the process has been really slowed down due to COVID. Things are changing pretty much day by day, so I think you have to stay on top of it. But I would say if you're interested in O1, the earlier the better. So, latest news. We have a new president and vice president. They are definitely taking a different approach. On their first day in office, they released a number of executive orders. Really, in terms of employment-based immigration, what you need to know is that the mood, the tone has improved already just within a couple of weeks. In terms of substantive changes, there has not been anything really specific that would indicate specific changes, but I would say that the messaging coming from the White House is much more positive. We're expecting an announcement today at 5 p.m. Eastern time, and a lot of it will not impact employment-based immigration, but what we do expect is that the president is going to ask the heads of all of his branches that handle immigration to take a look at things and try to make things better. And I think a lot of it will just be administratively more efficient. I think that's what we're going to see. So you'll have to stay tuned. The other thing that's important to note, particularly for this audience, is that the travel bans impacting Europe remain in effect. So what that means is that, unfortunately, for many of you, you're not going to be able to travel to the US without obtaining a waiver. There is a way to get around it by traveling to a third country for at least 14 days. Everything is very fact and case specific, so it's important to talk to somebody. But I would hope that this administration is going to take an approach that looks more at testing and quarantining to open up travel more, but it likely won't happen until April. You can find out more about the new testing requirement. You do have to be tested before, if you are able to travel to the US, you do need to have a test within 72 hours. And then finally, though we're not going to talk about other visa types today, just a note for anybody interested in the H-1B that we do expect the H-1B lottery to happen again this year in March. So let us know if we can help with that. On to the O1. So do you think you stand out? And I guess I should say, even if you don't think you stand out, you might actually stand out. So oftentimes, what people don't realize is that some accomplishment that maybe they've had on a local level, a publication in maybe a regional journal or scientific journal, or performance at a local event, that could qualify you. So don't count yourself short. As I said, there are really two different types of O1s. There's O1A for business, people, and science. And the criteria for that we'll go into, but what we want to show is that you've done some extraordinary work in the area of business or science. And then O1B is for people in arts, media, sports, entertainment, anything creative. And finally, there is something called an O2. That's for the O1B people. Think of a singer who has a critical person in their band. The O2 might work for that bandmate. And Arthur will talk a little bit more in a bit. And finally, just a note about the O visa is that it's a really good option if you're thinking of eventually trying to obtain a green card for permanent residence in the United States. Oftentimes, the O1 criteria is the same as the green card criteria, so it's a good way to evaluate whether you're going to qualify for a green card. So first, at a high level, let's talk about the high level requirements. We've got the fact that you need to have a sustained national or international acclaim. That just means in most cases, it needs to be more than just one thing that you've done. We want to be able to show a record. Now, of course, if you won a really big award like a César, then of course you're going to qualify. But for most people, we want to show a track record of your success. We also need to show that you're going to continue to work in the field. So if you're saying that you're an extraordinary entrepreneur, then you want to be coming to the US to start a new business, for example. One of the requirements of the O1A category is that you need to provide a consultation, or for most people, instead, we would do what's called an advisory opinion. And this is where you would reach out to somebody who perhaps is better known than you, who can comment on your extraordinariness. And oftentimes, one of the things that we do in our approach is we'll push you quite hard to try to reach out to somebody who maybe you don't even know, but who's very well known themselves, because these advisory opinions can really make or break a case. And one of the things about the O1A, and we're going to go through these criteria in a second, is that oftentimes people get really stuck on the criteria and they forget to tell the story. And we find that the story of your success is really the most powerful aspect of the application. You do have to show that either you've won a major award like an Academy Award, but for most people, what we're going to show is that you have at least 3 out of these 8 criteria. So the 8 criteria are awards, membership, scholarly articles, original contributions, critical employment, high remuneration, judging others on a panel, and then press about you or your company. And we'll go into these in a bit more detail. So awards, I took a picture. Hopefully people recognize the woman on the left. She's French, Emmanuelle Charpentier. She won the Nobel Prize in chemistry last year. She would certainly qualify for an O1A. She has a major award, but you do not have to have an award at that level. It could be a much smaller award. It could be a regional, for example, a French Science Foundation Award in a subcategory. It could be an award in terms of being recognized and invited to join a leading French incubator or accelerator. And so you really have to get creative about how you've been recognized. It doesn't have to be a traditional award where you receive a trophy or a plaque. It could be some sort of special recognition that you've gotten. One of the things in particular that we look at with startup founders, because that's oftentimes we do O1As for startup founders, is we look at the amount of venture capital funding that you've received. It doesn't have to be venture capital fund in the US. It could have been funding that you've received elsewhere. This is an indicator. It's something that we can use for the award category. We do usually like to go beyond that, but I think it's generally a good indicator that others recognize your special extraordinariness. The other thing might be invitation to be a speaker. This doesn't naturally seem like something that's an award, but we've often used, to meet this criteria, we've often used where somebody has been a speaker at a TED Talk, for example. So it doesn't have to be a TED Talk, but maybe that'll help you think about some of the areas that might work in your case. Membership is a good one, because oftentimes this is something that even if you don't have right now, you could obtain it before we apply for the O1. The general criteria is that there has to be some sort of competitive criteria to be invited into the membership. But one of the things that we've helped people do is even if all it takes to become a member is to sign up or maybe to pay a fee, is that you could still qualify under this criteria by becoming a board member or taking on a leadership role within that organization. So give some thought to that. I think in particular, because we are dealing with people who have groups in the US, for example, the French Chamber of Commerce or other sorts of professional organizations that are specific for a particular nationality, that's really a great way to get involved. And I think, Arthur, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about your own story, because I think what people don't realize is you actually have an O1.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Ron. So when we talk about an extraordinary visa, people usually think that's a very high threshold, very hard to accomplish. And what we usually tell our clients is that it's not one thing or one accomplishment that's going to make you extraordinary, but usually a combination of pieces that will tell a story of how extraordinary you are. So don't feel intimidated by an O1. When it comes to my case, I'm I'm young. I have a short career, and even though I mean, I don't have tons of years of experience, but even that we were able to tell a very compelling story, blending my academic background to a very specific business approach too. So we were able to get my O1 based on that. But when it comes to membership, you can be creative. So we're gonna walk you through all this criteria, and you can be creative on all of them somehow. So for membership, for example, I'm a director of the Brazil, California Chamber of Commerce. And for you to become a member of this Chamber of Commerce is very easy. You just got to pay the fee, and you automatically you're a member of this association. That by itself would not meet this criterion of membership. But in this case, I'm not just a member, I'm a director. So they only have a handful of directors of a Chamber of Commerce that helps a community of more than 35,000 people, 35,000 Brazilians in Southern California. So we were able to put that situation into context and show how hard it's to be a director of the Chamber of Commerce and how impactful are the decisions that we take there. So you can be creative and not necessarily stick to what the law says, and you can find ways around it.
That's great. That's great. One other quick comment on this. I know we might have some startup founders that are joining this webinar. Being invited to become part of an accelerator is something that we frequently use, particularly if it's one of the more exclusive ones like Y Combinator, Techstars. It doesn't have to be one of the ones based in the US, but that's often something that we would use for this criterion. The next one that we're going to talk about is, oops, a little bit of delayed reaction on my keyboard here. Okay, the next one that we're going to talk about, we've grouped two of them together, scholarly articles and original contributions. This is pretty straightforward. It means essentially what it says. The key thing to keep in mind is that it's not just what you wrote. Just writing an article, publishing a book, that's very helpful, but what we have to do is put that into context. And maybe Arthur, I'm going to skip this around a little bit, but tell us again a little bit about your own story and how we used the book that you had published in Brazil. Yeah, so this doesn't need to be something that you publish or something you do in the US. That could be local. You could do that in your own country. In my case, I published a book and a handful of articles in Brazil, all of them in Brazil, and we managed to prove that had a very important impact both in the academic and business side. So again, that helped us tell the whole story, the big picture of the story. So all elements go together here. So also don't feel intimidated if you only have work published or only contributions in your own country. That's totally fine. And I think, Arthur, you and I were talking yesterday about you had some articles published in O Globo, which I don't know, to put it in context with France, maybe it's similar to Paris Match or one of the bigger publications in Brazil. And you use this phrase that I really like, which is that you have to activate your network. So it wasn't it wasn't as though you've been a contributor to O Globo for years and years and years. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you managed to get in contact with them?
Yeah, sure. Activating your network is a very, very important part of the process. And in this case, both for this criterion and the following one that we're going to talk about, it was very important to show that I had some publications and some media talking about myself. And a way to do it is I reached out to a lot of people too, even before the O1, because I like to write articles about different subjects. So I would reach out to them and say like, hey, I wrote this thing, do you want to publish? Or I would write to a journalist that I know and ask him or her if they would be interested to publish something or quote me on or something. And that usually works. And that turned out to be very helpful in my O1 case as well.
Yeah, so I think the theme for everybody joining in is two things to remember. One, don't be very humble. You need to think better of yourself because you're probably better than you even realize. And the other thing is you cannot be shy. You're going to have to really reach out, grow your network. Don't worry about possibly being rejected or ignored, because somebody is going to be willing to help you in this journey. I've skipped over some of the more obvious things, but if you're working on the COVID vaccine, that would be a really amazing original contribution. We've had much more, let's say, ordinary examples where somebody was working as a project manager for a big oil company, and just showing the impact of one of the projects that person worked on in terms of the revenue to the company. That's something also that we can use. So it doesn't, I think oftentimes these topics get really, they don't get enough attention, but we can get quite creative with them. The next one is, again, we're grouping two of them together: critical employment and high remuneration. And the reason that we group these together is that it's not enough to say, for example, oh, I'm the CEO of this startup company. Of course, you're in a critical role. The key is that we have to show that it's critical employment or high remuneration from an organization that has a distinguished reputation. And again, this is where we can really help you to get creative. So not everybody who applies for an O1 is going to be CEO of Peugeot, for example. You may have started a much smaller company. And so we will work with you to try to understand, maybe that smaller company has been recognized in the local media, or was something that a university helped contribute to, or maybe the company has a lot of revenues. That would be great. So we need to work with you to help you really tell the story about how the organization that you worked for has that distinguished reputation. And then final slide on O1A, and again, we're going to group a couple of topics together, is judging on a panel and press about you. And the reason that we group these together, similar to the last slide where we talk about the distinguished reputation, is that really in this case, we need to show that there's selectivity involved. So in terms of judging on a panel, again, I'm going to keep using this example of a startup founder, but there are so many opportunities to be on a panel that's part of a pitch competition, for example. But that by itself is not going to be enough. What we really need to show is selective was it to be selected as a judge, or even better, were you the lead judge, for example? So this idea of kind of drilling down and not just taking things on the surface, that's what we have to do on the O1. In terms of press, the one comment that I want to make about this is that these days, it's not actually that difficult to be quoted in an article, to maybe have your company featured in an article. What I want to encourage everybody to do is, when you have that opportunity, make sure to tell a bit of your own story, your own journey. Try to get that article to say something about how you got to where you are. Because the most common thing that we see in the request for evidence from the Immigration Service is that they'll say, oh, well, this article was about the company and it mentioned the person by name, but it really wasn't about the person. So we really, we really want to have an opportunity to say, when Marie was a child, she saw her mother struggling to get into the workplace. And so she, from that moment, decided that she wanted to start her own company that focused on helping women become leaders, for example. So it's that one little element of how you got to where you are can make the difference between the Immigration Service accepting the evidence versus saying that it's actually not about you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Arthur, who's going to explain now the wonderful O1B visa.
Thanks, Ron. Well, so we were spending some time talking about business and science, and now the O1B visa focuses on the creative industry, the artistic industry. And I mean, we're talking about a very broad industry. So what I'm going to talk here is not an exhaustive list. So I'm just going to mention on a high level what and who could qualify for an O1B visa. So we were talking about extraordinary artists, entertainers, and athletes, and it's a very, very broad subject. So we're talking about fine arts, visual arts, culinary arts, performing arts, literary arts, television, film, social media, music, sports, and esports. So it's a lot of possible professionals in that range. And we get a lot of questions of who could file an O1B, and that's a very, very fascinating topic because the O1B visa has way more flexibility than the O1A visa. And I think that goes along with the fact that the art industry is sometimes not very structured within like only one employer. So the law allows you to have more flexibility when petitioning for O1B. So an U.S. employer could file for you for an O1B, and that leaves you attached to this U.S. employer. So you only can have an employment with this person or entity. The other option is a foreign employer through an U.S. agent. So, for example, if you have your company in France, you could have a U.S. agent and then petition through this U.S. agent for employment here in the U.S. And the final option, which is this one that I'm talking about that has a lot of flexibility, is the US agent. And when I say US agent, it's not necessarily the agent figure. So like this person who procures employment for you, who is an agent per se. That could be any person that resides in the US or is a US citizen and could petition this visa for you. So the advantage in this case is that you can have multiple employers. So you can, for example, have 3 employers in the US. You can, if you're a musician, for example, you can have one that's going to book you shows in the East Coast, another one's going to book you shows in the West Coast. And the great advantage of this figure is that you can add employers as you go. So, for example, you only have 3 employers now, but then in the next 2 years, you're going to add 5, 6, 7 employers. So that leaves you with great freedom and flexibility to work as you develop your business in the US. And finally, there's also a very, very interesting point is that the O1B visa allows you to petition with hybrid business, artistic, creative professions. So in the creative side, you do have some roles that it's just not very clear where the creative side ends and the business side begins. So the O1B visa allows you to have the flexibility. We had a lot of successful stories, both with our firm and our colleagues, that we managed to successfully approve cases that are not very obvious. So they're not necessarily within that realm of subjects that we talked in a bit. So that's also good advantage of the O1B visa that allows you to have more flexibility, not only who petitions for you, but also within the subject matter of your work. Ron, do you want to comment on something, or should we go?
If I can just quickly add, this last point is really important because I'm sure there are some people that really you could be on either side of the divide, the business or artistic. And I just want to give an example where we've done an O1B for somebody who really was an expert in a very narrow design element aspect of mobile phone app icons. And the company that hired him potentially could have done an O1A based on that original contribution, but instead they did it as an O1B. And again, in case the point wasn't really clear, one of the great benefits of the O1B is that you could actually have multiple employers by using an agent as the petitioner, whereas in the O1A side, and we see this a lot with our startup founders, you're really going to be tied to one specific company. And if you want to start a second company in parallel at the same time, then you would actually have to do a second O1 petition, whereas the O1A petition, whereas the O1B affords you that additional flexibility.
Perfect. So now talking about requirements for you to get an O1B. Well, first, you got to have a consultation from a peer group or a labor organization. And that's what that means is basically, so if you're a musician, for example, there's a proper peer group or a labor organization that's going to tell you how relevant you are. So that's a very simple process. We just send your bio, your CV to those organizations, and they come back with an answer about your career. So that helps USCIS, helps the U.S. government to shape to narrow their, basically to have somebody that's actually a specialized organization talking about you. So that's one of the requirements of the visa. The other one is that for the O1B, since we're talking about creative professions, you could come to the US for 1 day, for example, if you have a show here, or you can come here for 6 months if you have a residency, artistic residency, or you could come for up to 3 years to work in the US. So that visa could be petitioned for 1 day, it could be petitioned for 3 years. And when we talk about 3 years, you got to establish a very, very strong basis, very detailed itinerary supported by contracts that support the need for you to stay in the US for the period of time that you're petitioning for. So, for example, if you come to the US to work for a couple of employers, we're gonna attach those contracts saying that you're needed for 3 years or whatever period of time you're gonna work. And especially now in the last years, that's a very important part of the process that needs to be very detailed and needs to make sense too. Cannot be just like, oh, he's gonna work for like 3 years. You gotta detail the projects and the concerts, the shows, all the proper details that you're gonna do in the US during this time. And also an important note on that is that you don't have to have performances every day. You don't have to have meetings every day when you're here, of course. You can have vacation periods. You can have periods where, for example, you have concerts somewhere else. So we have some clients that come to the US and to play for some time, and then they play in Europe. They come back. We can also play with those dates, and this person doesn't necessarily have to petition twice. So, for example, if he comes to the US and then goes for some other event, some other country, and then come back, we usually build the application to make sure we maximize the time that this person is going to be in the US. Also, for you to qualify for the O1B visa, you either have to have a significant award, and now we're talking about very big awards such as Grammy and Oscar, César, or you got to meet 3 of the following 6 criteria that we're gonna go through quickly now. So just on a high level, those criteria are you gotta have a performance as a lead in distinguished events. You gotta have recognition for achievements, performance as a lead or critical role for distinguished organizations. That's very similar to number 1. I'm gonna go through that. You gotta have critically acclaimed success, recognition from experts, and also high remuneration. So again, you gotta have 3 out of those 6, and that's we're gonna go through them in detail now. So first of all, performance as a lead. So in that case, we're gonna focus on distinguished events or endeavors or people you worked with that have an acclaimed reputation. So we're gonna argue what you did in the past and also what you're gonna do in the US. So we're gonna analyze what you did and who you did it with to make sure this is distinguished and acclaimed and has an important impact. And also we'll analyze what you will do in the US. So that's a very, very important part of the process. And this doesn't have to be, for example, when you do it, doesn't need to be very like an organization that is very distinguished, such as Cannes. This is very helpful, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. You also can talk about, if you're a folk musician, a French folk musician, you can argue that you worked with one of the most distinguished folk musicians in France, and that could qualify as this criterion. Ron, do you wanna add something,
Yeah.
or should we?
I was just
in the
gonna.
interest
I
of
was
time.
I was just going to quickly say that the reason that this photo is on the slide is that many years ago I was lucky to attend the Festival des Aix and attend an opera, and so I really want everyone to think about that. You don't have to be the soprano at an opera at the National Opera of Paris. It could be a local festival that's well known that people from around the world attend, or maybe even from around France or your country attend. And you don't have to be lead. Doesn't necessarily mean that you are the star in the traditional sense. Again, this is where we can work with you to think about, maybe you were not the soprano, but you were the lead violinist in the orchestra. So there's lots of ways to use these categories and make them work for you.
Perfect. So now, national or international recognition, that's what it sounds. So basically, we want to tell the achievements you have in your field. So that is supported by press. So when you have press talking about you, again, doesn't need to be an American press. It can be press from all around the world. And also what helps you to tell how achieved you are is the places you performed, you played, you acted. That helps tell the story. So again, it's everything is about the story here in the O1 context. So we're not looking at one or two things you did, but also everything you've been doing in this field that helps us tell the story. And this national or international recognition can be shown both with this achievements in the field, but also with recognitions from organizations, from the government, and for experts. So what we usually do is, as we were saying, of the importance of activating your network, it's to show important people who you worked with in the past, or not necessarily worked with in the past, but know about your work and can attest the relevance of your work. So here they're gonna say that you're a great musician, you're a great artist, you're a great jiu-jitsu, for example, practitioner, and that will help us tell the story of how extraordinary you are as well. Or also, if you've worked with the government, for example, the government can also attest your relevancy. Especially the government's very good too, because it talks about also, it relates a lot of the culture of the country, is very specific, so that it also gives us a very good leverage to argue about the extraordinariness of the client. So that's also a good point to make. I think in the interest of time, Ron, do you want to run to the next one, or you want to comment on something here?
Well, I think it's important to comment because you had mentioned a great example, the performer Angèle, right? And because there's this new hit that's out with Dua Lipa, and you don't like, everything is sort of these connections. So maybe they haven't heard of Angèle, but they've heard of Dua Lipa. And maybe Angèle is not the one applying for the O1, but you were one of the main musicians. So it's a lot of times we have to kind of go 2 or 3 degrees to show how important you are. You don't necessarily have to be the main star that's in the news.
Exactly. Yeah, we had several clients that they were not in the news themselves, but they worked with plenty of people that were. So they were, for example, the go-to keyboardist of a very important jazz musician, or they were the go-to producer of a very important artist. So that helps us tell the story a lot. So that's a very good point. And that brings us to this part, the record of success. Also, this critical claim is what we were discussing now, that you don't need to be actually the lead. Don't need to be the person that's in the press all the time, but you can also be the person who's the go-to person, or the person that sets apart from within the industry. And finally, there's also the high remuneration requirement, which is very interesting because we can also be creative here. It's very relative, so we don't need to earn a big salary that you're gonna earn like $500 $1,000 per year. That's not necessary. What we usually do is we focus in the context. So for example, if you're a musician or if you're an actor or an actress, if you come to the US, then you're gonna earn a fee per hour, for example. We're gonna put that in context because we're gonna see how much you earn and how much, for example, an actor or actress usually earns in the US. And if you earn more than this person, the average salary, if you earn more than the average salary in the US, you can qualify also for this criterion. So it's all relative, and we can also be creative in this point as well.
Right. And again, the reason for this photo, if hopefully people saw this movie, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, you don't have to have been one of the lead actresses to qualify for an O1. Maybe you worked on choosing the locations, and that's your area of extraordinary ability. Beautiful scenes from Brittany, maybe you worked on the costumes, etc.
Yeah, and that's a good point because it leads us to the final part of the presentation. You might be wondering, so if we're talking about the O1Bs, and so we're talking about the lead artists or the musicians or the actors and actresses, directors, whatnot, what about the team members? And the O2 is the proper way to do that. So O2, as Ron was saying in the beginning, it's exclusively for the O1B context. So for that, we're talking about the necessary team that will come to the US with you to accomplish something. So for the O2, we also need a consultation from a peer group, just like the O1B that we just went through. Something very important about the O2 that it's dependent on the O1B, so it's not very flexible. So let's say if you're a roadie of a band, if you get an O2 based on the band that you're supporting, you're attached to this band, so you can only work for this band unless, of course, somebody else petitions for an O2 for you. Then you can work for this other person. And basically, what the government is looking for when we petition for the O2 is that you are an integral part of the event, and your very particular experience with this O1B professional cannot be performed by anyone else. So it's basically the band or the actor or like the production needs you to perform this job, because they just cannot find anybody else to perform this job, because nobody knows how to do it like you know it. So it's the support personnel type of visa that of course without the team members, the support members, no creative part of the process can be executed. So that's a very important part of the O1B context as well. Anything comment here, Ron?
Just yeah, I mean, the great thing about the O1B again is that we might have to decide, is it better to do an O2, or maybe they qualify for their own O1B. So depending on what the support role is, you might actually qualify for your own O1B based on your own merits. So I know we went through a lot. Go ahead.
No, sorry. No, yeah, because you're right. So for example, if you're a production manager and you support different bands, you could definitely qualify for an O1B, for example, and don't need to be attached to only one band. You could qualify for an O1B yourself. So then you have way more flexibility to develop your business here in the US.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ron. That's all.
No. It's great, and thanks, Arthur, and thanks everybody. We're really looking forward to the Q&A part. I want to encourage everybody to dream bigger. That's what I like to say all the time. And you've got our individual contact info there, as well as the link and the QR code to make an appointment with us. And Roman, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Ron. This was very precise and I think very useful for all our audience here. I see we have quite a few people on the Facebook Live. So feel free to ask any questions in the comments, and don't worry, I also have access to those, so I'll put them over. So also for the people who are connected on Zoom, if you're not too shy today, we would love to hear your voice. I will hide your last name, but you can click on raise your hand and you will be able to ask your questions live or maybe just one question because we have quite a few to go over. I also want to remind you how to scan a QR code, because some people haven't done it yet. Maybe if you've been to the restaurant, you open your camera, you just pass on the QR code, and then you will be directly redirected to Ron's and Archer Calendly, which is a digital calendar. And from there, you can book a meeting with them. Okay, so someone had raised his hand, but I think he took it down. He has it up. Okay, we're going to take Yves, and then I'll start reading the questions that we got in the Q&A.
Thank you so much. Hi, Romain. Hi, Ron. And hi, Arthur. Thank you so much for the presentation. That was really good. Very informative. I just have a quick questions about B1, the O visa for academic research. If you have extensive academic research, i.e. PhD level, or in the process of doing so, with a subject that will be of concern or of interest for US corporations, I mean, could that be something that qualifies, especially if it's part of a new trend of US regulation?
Yeah, thank you, Yves. That's a great question. We didn't really talk too much about the academic or scientific side, but the criteria for academic research really applies in terms of the original contributions, scholarly articles, and the key would be the same, which is one is we need to make sure we can attribute the article to you. So it can't just be that you are a research assistant. Your name needs to be on the article, and then telling the story about why that research is important. So we've seen too many times where people have tried to do an O1 maybe on their own or through another law firm, where they just include the copy of their article, but they haven't really explained the importance of that research. So if you're saying that it's going to be important to business, we probably would want to also include some sort of market research that shows how that article can be applied to help companies maybe gain new clients or grow their revenue.
Thank you.
And again, I mean, that would not be considered a major award, of course. So you would have to show 3 out of those 8 criteria. So that would be 1, and maybe we could even do 2 with that article. But we would still need to show at least 1 more.
Thank you, Yves, for your question. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to Ron and Archer. We'll put the QR code again at the end, so everybody can scan it if you didn't have the opportunity. We have another question from Raphael.
Hi, can you hear me?
Very well.
Hi, I sent him the question by email as well, but I will just ask now. Hi, Arthur. I'm from Brazil. Olá, tudo bom? So I have 13 plus years of a career in entertainment. I won awards at the Berlinale. I wrote and produced stuff for Amazon and Netflix with Lorena Comparato, who mentioned you. And I'm secure about my background and prove that I am a talent. But recently I decided to apply for an MBA program in the US. I already did an MFA program in the US at Columbia, where I graduated in 2011. I'm applying for one now in business with a focus of entertainment at USC. My question is, like, I fear that this could disturb my case in a way, like, oh, he's in a business path now, and the jobs he can get after this maybe won't make him qualify for our O1B visa, which I think is the one that I qualify the most. I don't want to go to the US and be a writer in writer's room. I want to be an executive in development. So I'm just like, oh, should I just do the O1 right now and then think about the MBA once I'm in the US? Or I'm a bit just confused between where I am, where I am right now in my career and how that can affect my O1 process.
Right. Yeah. That's a very good question, Rafael. The good thing about the O1 visa is that, as we were mentioning, it allows a lot of flexibility. So you could have a path that is even though you want to be a development executive, that could also qualify for somehow like a creative position as well. And a good thing about the O1B is that you can also do your MBA. So if it's part-time, you can do your MBA. So that allows you to both study and work. Or if you want to come to the US as only a student, you can do the MBA, and at the end of the MBA, probably you'll be eligible for the OPT, which will allow you to work under this course. So that could be also a route for you. Ron, do you have any more thoughts about that, or?
Nope. No, I think that you said it.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you, Rafael.
Thank you for the question, and thanks for a pretty solid answer here. I'm going to switch quickly to the Q&A, and then if we have enough time, I'll take some people live again, all right? But you can keep your hand up and hopefully we'll get to you. Alexandra is asking, hi, thanks for the presentation. Can the O1 petitioner bring his family? Can the wife husband work as well on the same visa?
Yeah. First of all, I love the snow falling behind you. Arthur and I are here in beautiful, sunny Southern California, in case anybody's wondering. But the answer to the question, yes, spouses and children under the age of 21 can apply for what's called an O3 visa. It does allow study, but not work.
Thank you. From an anonymous attendee, do you have any statistic about the age of those who obtain an O1? What is the percentage of those in their early 20s?
Yeah.
Then I'll let you answer, and then I'll comment, because I have a lot of friends in New York who are on O1, and a lot of them are artists, and they're young as well.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, this is something we talk about a lot at immigration conferences. Is that they'll often have a panel called the young artist. It's all relative. And so it's a combination of what have you done? And to show it's sustained is going to be harder when you're younger, but we can do it. And I would say probably, I don't know, probably about half of our O1 clients are in their 20s, and the other half are later in their career. So those are not formal statistics, but just to give you an idea.
A question that we got via email as well. I'd like to talk about those from Carl. Is it currently possible to apply for an O1 visa right now? Are the authorities currently processing the application, or is everything on pause? In my case, it's an O1 as a creative director in advertising.
Yeah, so for this case, it's similar to what we were discussing with Rafael. You have some flexibility here. Depending on your accomplishments in the past and what you want to do in the future, we can decide whether it's better an O1B or O1A. But as far as the first, talking about the first question you had, you definitely can apply for an O1 right now. As we were talking in the beginning of the presentation, it's perfectly fine. We can. There's no ban or anything that prevents you from applying for O1 right now.
Just a quick question that's on my end. When you're approved for an O1, does it come right now with the NIE or?
No. So
okay.
So yeah. So again, to kind of go back, there's two parts of the process. The immigration petition, no problem, apply for it. If you're in the US, it can take effect immediately unless you entered on ESTA. Otherwise, you're going to have to apply for a visa, and things are changing daily on that. We'll have to just keep track. But I would say if that's all that you're waiting on, don't wait. I would say get started sooner rather than later, because once you can apply for a visa, there's going to be a pretty big backlog of people waiting for appointments. I think in Paris, I believe the wait time is around 2 or 3 months just to schedule an appointment.
And so if you get your visa and the travel ban is still on, then people can just do 15 days in Tulum and then fly over?
So ideally, yes, although in particular, and I keep using Paris because I know a lot of people are French on the call, but there are reports that what Paris is doing is they're not approving the visas, even if you're not subject the visa ban. So these things are changing pretty quickly. Keep in mind that we've had a new president for less than 2 weeks. So like I say, I wouldn't wait. You definitely want to work with somebody who's experienced in this area so that we can help you navigate all of those different obstacles.
All right. We have other questions here. Another one from Alexandra. Can we use experience press in past startups, even though the startup doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. We would just want to show that that's still the area that you're going to be working in.
Yeah. Another question from James. Hi, does in the previous EB1A denial put me my second petition for O1A visa in jeopardy?
Generally, no. I mean, it's hard to answer that question without looking at the specific facts of the denial, but there's so many EB1As that get denied. It's not something that they really care about, to be honest. It shouldn't impact you. Should not impact you.
All right, another question from Alexandra. How long should we expect the process to be? And what should we budget in terms of legal fees?
Aha, somebody had to ask that question. So in terms of time, if you use premium processing, then you'll get an answer in 15 days, but that's an additional government filing fee of $2,500, which, given your next question, you might not want to pay. We've seen processing times all over the place. So we've gotten some O1s approved without premium processing in 3 or 4 weeks. But the vast majority of them without premium are probably going to take between 4 and 6 months. In terms of fees, I guess I would just give you kind of a ballpark, including government filing fees. It's probably going to be somewhere between 5 and 10K. And you'll find immigration that will charge a lot more than that. I think 5 is probably the bottom, including the government fees. But I would stay away from somebody who's wanting much more than 10, because there are lots of good lawyers out there that can do it for less.
Thank you for answering this one.
Mm-hmm.
So we have another one that was pretty good. Can we apply for green cards once we have the O1A? Why don't we just apply right away for a green card? That's a question from Simon.
Yeah. So yes, you can. There can be some travel restrictions. So again, not really enough time to get into all of that nuance, but generally people on an O1, there's no problem applying for a green card. Sorry, what was the other question again?
Why wouldn't we apply directly to a green card? Why would we go by the O1?
So usually it's because just the processing time to go directly to a green card, you're going to have to do the whole process outside the country, and it's probably going to take you 18 to 24 months if you do that. And so for most people, they're going to want to do the O1, both because they can get it faster and also because it will be an indicator of possible success.
All right. We have 2 more minutes, so I'm going to take 2 questions live. We have Christophe.
Hello, Christophe.
And then we're going to take Jacqueline.
Hi, sorry, I was on mute. I don't have quite a question. I'm in the United States already, but I just wanted to, immigration is something that I'm interested into because of my own story. I was actually applying for O1, and one thing that I wanted to share with the audience, and something that you mentioned, but very, very shortly, and that's something that if there's any people in the audience working in the web industry, is that the O1B can also be used for people in the web industry. And there's something that because when we reached specifically in the web industry, there's a lot of questions. Usually we say that it's the H1B, but the H1B is more for engineers, and that doesn't go with art directors, UX designers, etc. And so I just wanted to put that out there because that's always something that it's a question mark for all of us working in the web industry. And so yeah, that's it. I would say also you made a very good presentation. So I have no question. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you very much. That's a great comment. Please spread the word because yes, web designer is not very good for H1B, but O1B could be a great option.
Thank you for this input. We have Jacqueline.
Jacqueline, bonjour. Hello.
Bonjour.
Can you hear me?
Very well.
Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry to ask again, but I wrote an email yesterday asking that if I publish my first novel, which is going to be, I hope soon, I'm crossing my fingers, is it going to be easier? Because I already lived in the States for 5 years, studying filmmaking. I'm not so young anymore. I think, by the way, I know Simon Reeve. I saw that he was writing there. And I would like to go back to the States, to tell you the truth. I'm here in Madrid, but there are more opportunities, creative opportunities in the States. So if I publish my book, even if I don't get any award, is it going to be possible? Is it going to be easier? What should I do? That's my big, yeah.
That's a great question. That per se would not lead you to the O1, but that will help a lot. So that if you publish your novel, that will help us tell the story or of your case. So that's a very, very good start to have the book. So that combined with your previous experience, whatever you've been doing, your work you've been doing for the past years, that will help us tell the story. But the novel is a great start.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Archer. Thank you, Ron. I think we're going to wrap up here. If anyone needs to see this again, don't worry. You can directly go to our Facebook account, either French Morning or Frenchly, where you're still live as of now. If you can wait 24 hours, you will get an email from Zoom with all the contacts, also the link to their Calendly, in order to book a meeting with our two experts of the day. If Ron, Archer, you had a final word, maybe?
Do you want to start, Ron?
First?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay, first. Go ahead. Sorry.
So merci beaucoup. Thank you everybody for joining. It's really been a pleasure to talk about this. We hope that we'll hear from you. We really want to be part of your story. That's what I think we're most passionate about, is telling these great stories. Everybody is different. I mean, even you could tell from the Q&A, everybody has their own unique story. So we really want to be the ones to help tell it for you. So thank you. And again, we hope to hear from you.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the story is such a great, I mean, we've been talking about over and over, and the story is such a critical part of this process. That's why it makes this type of visa so fascinating, because it's so evidence oriented. It allows you to be creative, allows you to tell your story in a very particular way. So, and it's very flexible as well. So we could definitely accommodate different experiences and also can accommodate what you want for the future. So thank you so much, Romain, for this opportunity. Thank you, French Morning. So we look forward to talking about the subject a bit more in the future.
Perfect. I'm glad we fit in the hour, so you guys can all go back to the rest of your day or maybe the rest of your evening. I'd just like to remember you that next week, for our English speakers who would like to master French a little more, we're going to have on Tuesday Secrets of Mastering French from Experts at the Alliance Française. That's on Tuesday. And then for our more francophones, on Thursday, we'll have, and that's for students or parents looking to have their kids join ESCP Bachelor in Paris. That's going to be on Thursday 11th. You'll know everything about the bachelor at ESCP. Thanks for joining us today, and have a good afternoon or good evening. Bye-bye.